Conductors Workshop. I'm Harry Bulow, and today we're talking with Dr. Charles Conrad. Dr. Conrad is the founder and director of the Indiana Wind Symphony, which is a premier performing ensemble of wind ensemble music, and is worldwide and nationally highly ranked. And so Dr. Conrad, we're going to try to pick his brain a little bit and try to study a few thoughts of, share things with him a little bit. He's a renowned conductor. He's been a choral director. He has a really fabulous trumpet studio here in Indianapolis. And he's very busy. He's conducted throughout the world. And he's a fun person to know and has done a great job as a conductor. So we're just going to ask him a few questions, see if we can share some thoughts today and get his take on things.
Well, thank you, Harry.
Yes, welcome to the Conductor's Workshop.
Thank you so much.
And today I thought we'd just start with the initial question of how did you decide to become a conductor? How did things maneuver in your career? And tell us a little bit about your life.
Well, that's an interesting story. Well, I don't know how interesting it is, but it's an unusual story. When I went to college, I went to the Indiana University School of Music and started in 1972. My goal at the time was to be the fourth trumpet on The Tonight Show.
Okay,
with Johnny
great.
Carson and Doc Severinsen.
Sure.
And so I was thinking completely in the world of trumpet performance. So I pursued that career for a while, and I realized it wasn't really going the direction that I thought it might. And almost by happenstance, and I'll go deeper into the story if you want, I stumbled into the position of being the assistant conductor of the Carmel Symphony.
That's terrific.
When it was a brand new ensemble.
Fantastic.
And that really got me excited a little bit. So this would have been about 1978 or so.
Wow.
And I started conducting with them, and then worked into a couple of other part-time community orchestra type situations. Also became a church choir director. And then I went to, I got a master's in orchestral conducting at Butler, and then went to Ball State to work on a doctorate. And at that point, it was still all orchestral conducting. I was the church choir director on the side, but I considered myself principally an orchestral conductor. And that's the way it worked from going from trumpet to conducting.
Okay, terrific. So when you're talking with young conductors, and how do you coach them, and where is music headed, and how do you work with young people when?
Oh gosh, do you have about 4 hours? Where is music headed?
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one. I'm not sure. I'm reading a book that says it all went wrong about World War II with atonality and serialism and a whole lot of things becoming more the dominant form of composition, and the theory as to whether that's why people stopped going to the symphony, because they just didn't understand what they were hearing. So now where was I going with this?
the future music. We can keep that as kind of in the back of our head as we move forward.
So that's kind of where we are. And there's a lot of discussion about that. With young conductors, boy, I think the most important thing is just to feel comfortable standing there.
That's right.
And so when I taught conducting for a little while at Marian University, and I think I probably didn't teach the
baton kind of
this patterns as much as you get in a lot of young conductors. Now that's important. A couple of the exercises I did, they had to conduct 4/4 while they were singing the Star Spangled Banner, which is
good. That's great, yeah.
And managed to keep both things going at the same time. Yeah. And then I would ask them to carry on a conversation with me. I'd say, okay, start conducting in 3. Now, what'd you do this weekend? How are your parents doing? How many brothers and sisters? Now switch to 4.
That's good.
And so we worked the patterns kind of independent of music,
Sure.
actually. So that because the patterns aren't really the music. The patterns
That's right.
are just something you use to communicate with the orchestra. And too often, I think, conductors focus on patterns
That's right. Yeah.
as opposed to focusing on the music.
Of course. Now, let me ask you a question that, you know, we can go back and forth with some of these ideas that you might have, once you connect with different types of thoughts. But you really run a professional ensemble, pretty much, mostly professionals. And how would you compare that to some extent with the college wind ensembles, the K through 12 directing, or orchestra? I mean, all of these.
Sure.
How do you differentiate when you go in front of a group?
With my group, I wouldn't say it's completely professional. Probably the biggest profession we have is music educators.
Okay.
We've got a few people that do make their living strictly as performing musicians, but I'd say that's maybe 5%. Probably 40% or 50% are in music education, either as a high school band choir director, something like that, church music, private teacher on their instrument, that kind of thing. And then we've got every imaginable range of professions, and some that it's just been intriguing to learn more about. For instance, we've got one guy who is one of the world's authorities on solar eclipses.
Wow.
And
Incredible.
we've got one that's coming to Carmel in 2024, first time in 800 years there's been one.
Well, that's right.
in Central
And you're going to
Indiana.
perform at that, I think, right?
Yeah, and
Right?
we're going to do a performance that's going to lead up to the total eclipse.
Yeah,
And I
that's awesome.
hope for good weather. It's scheduled to be out front of the Palladium.
Is this next year or
It's
something?
in 2024.
2024. I've got to be there at that concert. That's
I
terrific.
think it's April, if I remember right.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, some of these things that, so when you're approaching the conducting of an ensemble, maybe it doesn't matter so much how you approach it. I guess it would be different if you're K through 12.
Oh,
There's different
sure.
kinds of,
If I was actually invested, and part of my main responsibility was teaching them how to play their instruments,
Yeah,
how to function in a musical ensemble,
Sure.
things like that, it would be a completely different matter. With this, I've got the advantage of having a lot of people who are teachers, and so if we've got a couple of, well, for instance, we've got a middle school band director and a high school band director in the trumpet section.
Well,
So
helpful, yeah.
if there's some kind of issue, our principal trumpet is a professional trumpeter who has a tremendous private teaching studio. So we've got all of the voices in that section that we need as far as if there's a technical issue, if somebody's having trouble with intonation or whatever it happens to be. And that's pretty much true for all the sections.
Do you have any special tricks or tips or stuff like that to help with intonation as a problem as you encountered that? Have you ever had any special insights that helped you at all, or?
I don't think so. I really don't. I know there are a lot of directors that have these theories, and I know there's a lot of really wild stuff going on, even down in the middle school and high school level.
Yeah, of course.
Where they're holding a note for 20 minutes,
Oh,
that
wow.
kind of thing, and
Okay.
along with a drone pitch, things like that.
Wow, yeah.
I've never really experimented with anything like
And
that.
when you are coming to repertoire, I mean, that might be a somewhat different approach in more professional, or, I mean, when you select, because your audience is a little bit different audience than the college wind ensemble or the high school band, how do you select, or what's your thoughts when you go through repertoire?
Okay, and this is where I do have a theory.
Okay.
I consider that I have three clientele. We have the audience, we have the members of the ensemble, and we have the art of music.
Sure.
Now, if I were doing a high school ensemble, I'd have four clientele. because I would also have the training of the students, and that would be a major critical concern, as you said. But I try to balance it between those three things. And we want to play music that is engaging to the audience, but we don't want to play it so that everything sounds like a Pops concert where you can kind of sit back and enjoy it and not really think about it too much. We want to challenge them with some pieces, and then we want to pay homage to the art of music. We want to play John Philip Sousa marches.
That's great, sure.
We want to play transcription of classical overtures because that was the foundation of the literature through the 1800s for the concert band. And then, for instance, on our August concert, we're doing 2 world premieres. And I'm glad both composers will be with us. One's from Central Indiana, the other one's from Texas. And so we try to present a lot of new music as well.
That's great. So have you found, working with different composers, do they present certain challenges or certain types of music that you feel, well, I feel we can do this, but I'm going to shy away from that?
Not so much with the composers. With the pieces itself, there are pieces I would love to. Okay, I'll give you an example of when things went wrong.
Okay.
Probably the weirdest and least enjoyed concert that we've ever done here at the Palladium was the second one we did.
Okay.
And I thought I had a great concert. It was called Les Six.
Okay.
The French composers of the early 20th century. And the sixth, it was the premiere, well, it wasn't the world premiere, but it was our premiere of James Barnes' brand new Sixth Symphony. And people stayed away in droves.
Okay.
We had a huge crowd for the concert right before that, where we did Rhapsody in Blue and a lot of more familiar things. And I kept thinking, but here's the thing. I got more calls from Europe about Les Six and the Six.
Okay.
They loved it.
Wow.
They thought this is going to really be a breakthrough because I'd actually found wind pieces by each of the 6 composers, which most of them are not very well known. There are a couple that are, but most were I had never heard of before. And so it got a lot of press in Europe. It got almost 0 in Central Indiana. So I learned my lesson with that one, because the box office called me and said, what do we tell people when they ask who Les Six was?
Les Six.
And it never dawned on me, oh, okay, this is going to be a problem.
Yeah, that's true. Well, this kind of goes along with another thing we could discuss a little bit, is the idea of challenges, opportunities, successes. In your time with the Wind Symphony, what do you regard as, well, these were some top things we accomplished? Or
the fact that we've done so many premieres of pieces, I think, is big. The fact that we get to be a resident ensemble in one of the finest concert halls
it's incredible
in the country. I mean, and that, I hate to say it, kind of fell into our laps because I already lived here in Carmel since 1976. And they were kind enough to build this house, 5 minutes from my house.
Incredible.
So we started talking to them about having a resident. We knew the Carmel Symphony was going to be a resident company here.
Of course.
About also having a concert.
Yeah, it's stunning. I mean, there's no, if people are not aware of the Palladium, if you have a chance to come to a concert here, it is tremendous. And to hear the wind ensemble is just spectacular. I came here a few weeks ago. It was, I'm thinking of Pinchas Zuckerman, but I don't think it was Pinchas Zuckerman.
Oh, it was no, not Zuckerman. Oh gosh.
Itzhak Perlman.
Itzhak Perlman. I couldn't
Perlman. And it was really a great concert and a fun thing because, like we're trying to interview conductors and artists and the like. he did the kind of a historical layout of his life.
Oh yeah, it wasn't what I expected.
Oh, so you went to that?
I was at that concert.
Oh, great.
as well.
Okay.
But it was enjoyable.
Yeah, terrific.
I mean, for me, would I have liked to have heard more music? Probably yes, but his whole manner of speaking to the audience, it was just so comfortable.
And the clips.
And all of the video clips,
That's
photographs. Yeah, it really was a
So that brings
great
on another idea that you might want to discuss a little bit. Do you, in approaching a concert, do you sometimes do some different kind of presentations rather than just musical presentations? I mean, you do a little bit of speaking before each work, kind of laying the groundwork for how this piece is going to, work out and what is the point?
Right. There are times that we do that, and there are times we let the music speak for itself.
Sure.
But I think it's important to let the audience in on some of the things that the conductor and the musicians know.
Sure.
Even though, I'll tell you what I use as an example. I think the service bands do a great job with this. The Pershing Zone, the Army Band, the President's Zone, the Marine Band. You'll almost always see a narrator, and it's usually their soprano soloist
Okay.
who speaks before each piece. If there's a piece that's written about the poem, you better believe you're going to hear the poem before you hear the piece. And most of the time, the poem's in the program notes.
Sure.
And so you're sitting there, it's in a dark concert hall, you're trying not to be obvious as you hold your cell phone light up to see what poem read, and still it's hard to read.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to share some of the history and some of the secrets. Now, some musicians don't like that because they already know this information.
Of course, yeah.
So I have gotten a few musicians who've told me, why don't you just shut up and conduct the music?
Okay.
But I think all in all, most of the comments I get from audience members is very positive.
I think it's helpful to give people an insight. And you have a heart for how, I think that one of the things about your conducting, besides just the professionalism that you bring, is that you have a heart for the audience. And you have a sense that you're kind of in between trying to guide them in the sense to what to look for in this piece. And so I think you have a heart for...
Well, and I have a secret weapon too. And it's my wife who sits in the center box.
Okay.
And she gives me this signal if I'm droning on too long.
Okay. Well, that's...
So as soon as she gets bored, she'll give me a look and I'll know it's time to wrap it up and step on the podium.
That's terrific. So any thoughts on how you want to see the wind ensemble to do X, Y, Z in the next 3 years? What's your plan, or 5 years, whatever it might be?
I would love to get more students.
I see.
Music students specifically.
Playing in the ensemble?
Not
or
playing in the ensemble,
attending
concerts.
Yeah.
Too many of them really don't do that. They do their school ensemble,
Right.
and they might see another group that's on the same competition or something like that.
Sure.
But it's shocking to go to the Indianapolis Symphony and to see the age of the audience. It's,
Yeah, it's getting older and
you're
older.
seeing mostly people in their 50s and 60s.
That's right, yeah.
And very few teenagers. And that was not the case until, I'm going to say 20, 25 years ago. I'll tell you where it really hit me. I did a conducting workshop in Bulgaria, which I know is someplace that you're headed to.
That's right.
And when you, as a conductor, and please don't take this the wrong way. When you walk out on stage, and this is one of the things I love at the Palladium, you can make eye contact with every person in the audience.
Yeah.
You can't do that most places because there's spotlights in your eyes. All you can see is usually a sea of bald heads and gray hair.
Okay.
And I know that's a drag to think about visually,
Sure.
but that's usually what you see.
Well,
And I just remember the shock, and it probably showed on my face, when in Bulgaria, on a Tuesday night in the middle of the summer, seeing a concert. It was a conducting workshop, so none of us were known quantities at all, especially in Eastern Europe.
Of course.
I mean, I don't think they would have known any of us in Eastern Illinois
There
either.
may be
But,
so.
but when I walked out to conduct Brahms' Second Symphony,
Wow.
and I looked down, and the whole front 3 rows are high school kids holding hands.
It's
And I
great.
thought, what is this? This is
Yeah.
just a complete, it was joyous.
Yeah.
There were people standing along the outside of the concert hall. A fire marshal would have had a fit in the United States. There were people sitting on all the steps. Every seat was packed. And here it was a complete orchestra that was put together for the event and unknown conductors. And that was just kind of the
Part of
difference.
the lifestyle.
The way things work in Europe versus the way things work here.
That's right.
And I wish there was a way to bring some of that back.
Yeah, well,
Because that used to be the case. When I was in high school, I'd see friends
Yeah.
at Indianapolis Symphony concerts. There just was so much more access.
well,
To music.
you know, there's still some possibilities out there for us. So as long as you're still remaining conducting and working and bringing the music to the audience, we'll
Well,
see if we can change
We,
the culture.
we definitely hope that's the way we're headed.
Yeah.
Is, trying to, and the thing is, we don't want to program it so, I'm trying to think of a good example. We don't want to make it all movie music. We don't want to make it
Right.
all stuff they're familiar with.
Sure.
And to be honest with you, I know a lot of professional orchestras do this,
Sure.
and that's how they sell
Yeah, of course.
a real heavy batch of their tickets.
Yeah, I used to play in a lot of symphonies as a saxophone player, and I was always pulled into the Pops concerts, and of course they were always jammed, and they would wish they were there playing Tchaikovsky, but
Sure.
we did Pops concert, and
But
we
that's
played
what pays for playing
But,
Tchaikovsky
you know,
the rest of the season.
that music, American music, and the popular American music is great music. I mean, some
Oh,
people,
sure.
wow, I mean, this is just fun to play these charts.
Well, and this is one of the things I'm again going back to the Palladium that I'm thrilled about is this place has such a celebration of that.
Sure.
Because our music director is Michael Feinstein, one of the true authorities
Yeah, yeah.
on the Great American Songbook
Sure.
and the music of everything from George Gershwin to Frank Sinatra to the Beatles, and so that is really celebrated, especially here.
Sure. That's great, yeah.
And that's a good mix of how to do things.
Well, it's really great talking with you a little bit today, and I just thank you for sharing some of your thoughts with our friends.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you so
Great to
much.
see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Harry.
You take care.
Thanks for watching the Conductor's Workshop, and please join us again for the next edition. Thank you so much.